Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kirby. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks. So
Back to
today yes,
back
back
to
to OSINT. Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
I was going to say today we're going to discuss the predator of Seville case.
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
can you give us a little bit of information about it, or should we show the trailer?
Sure, we can show the trailer first, and then I'll give a little bit of information about it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Study. I was an 18-year-old kid.
I studied abroad in Sevilla.
Sevilla. I really loved it. It was like an adventure. I was really excited by the whole thing and thinking about all the trips.
Discover Excursions was recommended.
And they emphasized safety. The main tour guide seemed like a nice guy.
He was handsome, he knew everyone.
A playful personality.
Todas nosotras éramos muy vulnerables y no nos dimos cuenta de eso, pero Manuel lo veía.
The last night of the trip, he was like, oh, well, I can get champagne and we can all hang out in the room. I started getting really tired. I woke up the next morning. That's when I realized what had happened.
Sarah, go ahead.
I'm going to stop it right there.
Since it's a okay.
So the one thing the one thing I wanted to say is before I continue with it, just some of the topics in this episode can be triggering if anybody has been a victim of a sexual assault. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
Okay, good idea.
Okay. Yeah. And is it okay if I show the rest of the trailer?
Yeah, because of the trailer, I think that Netflix wouldn't mind us playing the whole trailer.
Okay.
The embassy said you shouldn't talk to anyone about this. Second he told me no, I was like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I started building an investigation. The story just kept getting bigger. I went on the Today Show. I had no idea what I was involved in.
Yo empecé a gritar, ¡Es él! ¡Es él!
A lot of people started reaching out to me.
He had been doing this for years.
And then I got a direct message on Facebook.
Y nos enteramos de que se había caído del apartamento de Manuel.
It's terrifying.
Arranca el juicio contra el guía turístico de Sevilla.
A ver, yo creo que es un depredador, es un cazador.
Tenía una particular relación con sus clientes.
¿No podía tener relaciones con personas?
You feel like you were in the room with the devil.
You thought that we would be quiet about it. You were wrong. Something has to change.
This is just the beginning. For him and me.
All right.
So this is a new series that came out on Netflix recently. And
is it a miniseries? Or is it a okay?
It's a mini-series, and it's following up on this lady's 2013, Gabrielle Vega's 2013 trip to Spain when she went to study Spanish, and she went on a Discover Excursions trip. So just to give you some context of what happened, the Predator of Seville, the series, and the legal case that followed her Facebook activities. What happened was she is a foreign student. She was studying in Spain. She went on a Morocco trip with Discover Excursions. She was drugged. He put something in her drink, and she was assaulted. The case became widely known because she actually, at first, she didn't say anything. She went a couple of years, as some victims do. You know, they a lot of times it's really difficult to discuss if you've been assaulted, and so it took her a few years to come out and say, "Hey, I was assaulted," and when she did, she went ahead and posted it on Facebook. And when she posted it on Facebook, she wanted to know if it had happened to anybody else. And she just started getting bombarded with like a whole bunch of people that had also been assaulted by the same person. And that actually instigated a legal case in Spain. And for OSINT, although all of this is not OSINT, because she did do elicitation by putting that information on Facebook, but there is a lot of parts to this incident and to the legal case that relate to open source intelligence. So the first is that there was a lot of public disclosures. There was a lot of social media outreach. There was an open source trail around Discover Excursions, like when he took trips and when things were posted, they were able to use that to, cross compare to what some of the victims were saying.
Was he an employee at Discover?
He was the owner.
He was the owner. Okay.
Yeah, he was the owner. So he
was
was
he
the
driving
owner.
the bus, or what was like? Or did you just go along with?
He would go along with as like a chaperone, as a to make sure that the tour
on each trip. Okay.
Yeah, the tour was going well, and he would party with them. He would go to bars with them and party with them when he took this group of whenever he took people on a tour. So he could have like 20, 30 people on tour, and he would go to a nightclub with them, and then afterwards he would end up partying with like 5 or 6 people, and he would target the females. So the whole case, obviously not everything was from OSINT, but publicly available information played such a strong role in this incident. So today we're going to talk about some of the points, and I broke it down into 8 different points. The first one is when Gabrielle Vega first put her statement on Facebook, because in a way that was crowdsourcing. So some of the, I know some of the OSINT CTFs, they'll put like a case open online and say, okay, here's a case, we need to try and help solve it. In this instance, she was the case. She was the victim. So she put up her own story and said, hey, I want to see if this has happened to anybody else. Okay. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, thanks.
Comments?
I'll butt in. I will.
So the first is she posted in 2018 is when she finally came out, and she posted a warning. She said that there was she said, hey, this happened to me, and this could be happening to other people. And then she said, if you have had it happen to you, to contact her. And she just started getting totally bombarded. Some of the things that I thought about with this, though, is 2 things. The first is, if somebody were to do this outside of her incident, but somebody else who had something similar happen, and they were like, okay, I'm trying to find help via social media. The first thing is you really have to help protect those other victims. And I think there's a lot of ethics that goes along with that. And we can see some of that going on right now. Actually, you can do a cross parallel with that concept with the Epstein case, because you had people that were victims with the Epstein case. They didn't ask to be outed, but they were outed anyways. I think that with this is if somebody's using social media to elicit information or publicly available information, is that they need to make sure to keep that ethical guideline in place where they're not outing people that don't want to be outed.
Yeah, maybe somebody would tell her, but didn't necessarily want to be public to everybody else about it.
Right. And the other thing is, in a way, it's like doing an RFI, a request for information, but there is kind of a gray line there where her Facebook post, by making that post, that was elicitation versus just information collection.
Right. And of course, she's not the investigator, but in this case, she kind of is, because she's doing it herself. Yeah.
She ended up being the snowballing a whole bunch of investigators. So she was the kind of the initial investigator to this whole.
It's victim words. I don't know. Anyway, it's like it's her standing up for herself as a victim, and that really is like helping push the investigation. So to the investigators, her putting the stuff out is OSINT because she's putting it out. But
Yes.
to her person,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting about this, as far as that point, was in a way, while she went through this whole process, she was re-victimizing herself, and that really, looked at the concept of vicarious trauma when you're assisting and doing investigations, because it wasn't just vicarious, she was actually engaged. So she was re-traumatizing herself. So that's the first point. The second thing was the public media outreach. And I think that with this instance, she was the victim. She had a right to put out whatever she wanted as far as media outreach. Whereas if it had been somebody else who wasn't a victim, they really need to think about what level of information they're disclosing to other people, so that they're not interfering with the victim or with law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. The third is she had identification of additional victims and witnesses through social media platforms. She had actually more than 50 women reach out to her.
Did she ever have to find somebody without them reaching out? Somebody say, "Oh, here's somebody who's a witness or a friend of his or whatever that might have seen something," where she would have to hunt them down, or was it all just people coming to her because of her elicitation?
I think it was mostly people coming to her because of her elicitation. No, the investigators, I think, did some of what you just said. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that actually is OSINT adjacent, because the collection caused a whole network of initial discovery for evidence. And the individual accounts, so to her, she actually had to keep a lot of those like private.
Right. Because they don't want it public. They're just, yes, they want maybe law enforcement to know about it, but not everybody.
Right. She did get two other people, though, that in the end ended up testifying with her publicly.
Good.
So the other thing that was really interesting, I thought, from this whole instance is pattern of life, modus operandi, was able to be kind of discerned from multiple public-facing accounts, both by the victims and the criminal. So again, it was, there would be a picture of him at a nightclub, serving drinks to some of the victims, and So, and some of those he might actually end up like contradicting himself. So yeah, I thought that was, and it showed how he did some of the posts gave insights into like how he did his grooming. And how he did some of his predatory behavior.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the case also showed how he used different names on some of his accounts, and they were able to cross correlate those from the social media.
Okay. Yeah. That's one of my pet projects, is cross-correlating accounts across different social media platforms, or even on the same platform, looking for the Finsta, the fake account, and then yeah.
And then there was open source discovery also of possible lookalike businesses from open source information that were being run by him.
Oh, okay. So he had more than just Discover Excursions. He had some other ones as well?
Well, he got in trouble for the first one, and then he did a second one that resembled Discover Excursions afterwards. And then the U.S. Embassy actually sent out an alert on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then So the last point, and we can just talk about like some of the ways people can actually vet stuff with open source information prior to getting engaged with them.
Okay.
The last point that I had as far as that the open source information as it related to that whole incident was that there was so much public reporting by the initial victim who did the crowdsourcing of getting all the other people to participate. She was able to get TV interviews. She was able to get support from the U.S. Embassy. She was able to get support from law enforcement. So in this instance, I think it all worked well for actually assisting someone to solve a crime, as in crowdsourcing social media for something good. But there are some points I think that you can look at and say, if somebody did this incorrectly, it could backfire, badly. And so I think it's really important to look at, if you're going to employ social media for crowdsourcing publicly available information for solving a crime, is that you kind of look at, the pros and cons at the front end.
Yeah.
What would you have for some suggestions for that?
Sarah put me on the spot. So I don't know. I'm not into crowdsourcing. I mean, we crowdsource stuff. I will, but that's not a technique that I use. I don't crowdsource because obviously I'm an OSINT. I'm passive. Right. So in my especially sensitive information like this, give them an email address or something, or a way to DM you or something, some way to be private. Versus just ask.
Right.
Explicit crowdsourcing that you understand the sensitivity.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And I think, again, I mean, it's really weird when you look at this whole incident, because it did have such a heavy role from open source information for law enforcement investigations. And at the same time, you had victim, actually, I'm so sorry, my dogs are acting up. Participation, participation of a victim doing her own elicitation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So the other thing, the whole other aspect I wanted to discuss with this is what people can do to avoid being a victim in the first place when they're traveling. And the reason I thought about that is, well, I travel a lot. So everything from, when I went backpacking in Europe by myself, or went to the Middle East by myself, or went to whatever. People oftentimes, when they go overseas, that's when they don't do due diligence, or even if they do due diligence, because this was a very respected company. I mean, this person had hundreds and hundreds of students that went through his business, that were Americans that were studying.
And he was just depending on them. He was depending on them being quiet.
Right, exactly. He was depending on them being quiet. So, that brings up, how can somebody do some research before they engage in travel, or before they engage in going to go do something, to see what open source information is available to do their own OSINT.
Sarah, was there anything they could have found about him? I think, because you said he was respected, people weren't talking, weren't speaking up. Was there any hint of that, of like bad information? Not necessarily. So like what she would have needed to do is not necessarily even research that person, because it would have been everything would have been fine. It would have been just personal OPSEC, which I'm sure you're going to address right now.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, in this instance, I think that in this particular incident, there was not any red flags. I don't think anybody would have looked at that tour company and said, you know what, I think there's something off with this tour company.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I myself,
there weren't any red flags at that point. No one was picking up.
Yeah. And I mean, I had one tour company that was kind of shady one time, that was scary, so but not as bad as this. I mean, this is, obviously I was not assaulted.
What are your offset suggestions?
Well, so the first thing is, I think that, you have to do a couple things is there are incidents where there are bad reviews, not in this case, but in other cases there are bad reviews. So the first thing is, I think that before you go do anything, you should always check to see if there's any reviews.
Also, hey, they may have a ton of good reviews and only a few bad reviews, but read the bad reviews. Actually read them. Don't just say, oh, there's mostly good, so it must be good. No, go read the bad ones.
Mm-hmm. And I think, the things that's right now, in some places, they won't even post bad reviews because they're worried about being sued for posting bad reviews. And so if you really want to get truthful reviews, is actually try and reach out to somebody who's actually tried that service. If it's not infringing on the privacy.
If you can find someone.
Right. So I think that's another one. I do think that, some of the OPSEC things I would say, don't deal with those at all. For example, make sure you always have a buddy system. Don't drink, something that somebody else offers you as a drink, that kind of thing. But I do think that you need to do due diligence with looking at, whatever tour company you're going to use, where you're going to be staying, look up the emergency points of contact before you go someplace, know what the, do research on how to contact people. Always provide information of where you are to somebody else. And
there's apps for that. There's great apps for that. Hey, so Sarah, we can jump off of OSINT stuff. One of the things that I would think about that with her though. So this buddy system that you said, sometimes you don't have a buddy. Sometimes you are traveling by yourself. So I really like your suggestion of don't drink something somebody hands you, but the bartender is going to hand you stuff. What if it's him, right? So the thing is, I think that keeping some of your information private. So for example, if you're out with a tour, the tour guide stuff is not your party buddy. It's not somebody who when you're at the bar or whatever, the bartender should not know where you live or anything like that. This is not your drinking buddy either. And so I know you want to go out and have a good time, but if you're by yourself, drinking alcohol is a bad idea, regardless. A little bit is fine, but losing control, if you're by yourself traveling somewhere, none of these people are your buddies, right? You just met them. You don't know anything about them. So stay in control of your wits.
Right. Well, and also assume that the other party can have adversarial information as well. There's so many apps now with facial recognition or with
they might know you already.
Right, they might know you already. So I think it's really important to always keep that in mind. In addition, and the big one, not dealing with OSINT, but just in general for OPSEC is, when you go someplace, is always have somebody else know where you are.
Yeah. And so there's some great apps for that. In your mobile device alone, you can share the location. It doesn't matter which device you have. Most of them, all the smartphones have the ability to share your location with someone. But you can also use apps like Life 360 and things like that, but also just even keeping in communication so that they know where you're supposed to be going, so that they know that if they look at you look on the phone, it's not that, oh, well, maybe she's meant to be going over there. They know you've been in communication. They know you're on this tour.
Right.
You're staying at this hotel. They're that sort of thing.
Right. And I think that in this case,
none of
that would have happened. But I think that Gabrielle Vega, she was very brave for what she did. What she did was amazing. To come out and say, hey, I was a victim. This is what happened to me. And she did. Yeah. Because he would have kept on doing it. And I think that's very scary when you still look at it, because when you do look at things like what's happening with the Epstein case, with the Epstein victims, there isn't movement for some of the victims. So I think, I think that, it is an example of showing that, hey, somebody came forward, and, you can have a positive law enforcement outcome where the perpetrator is looked at. And so you shouldn't, I think that for other people, they could look at this and say, yeah, so you shouldn't give up.
Right.
You should.
And if you are a victim and you don't want to step out and you don't want to be the person you're not the brave one who wants to, that's fine. That's, as a victim, that's your choice. But what you could do is you could set up like RSS or search monitors to identify. So when somebody does come up, then maybe at that point you can say, okay, maybe I can give some information to that person or to that organization if they ever start investigating the person who did, victimized you.
Right.
There's some people who won't come out until something else happens, and that's their choice. If you're the victim, that is your choice. But you could set up, a monitor so that if something ever does start, the ball does start rolling on that case, and you feel brave at that point, you can jump in.
I think that is an excellent point, and I think that's something that most people don't think about when they are victimized. I think there's, especially for victims of sexual assault, a lot of times, whether it's a female or a male, it doesn't matter. There's also oftentimes a component of self-blame.
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of times that will over cloud what you're saying as a common sense thing is, okay, this happened to me. I'm not ready to come forward, but I'm going to set up an RSS feed. And if something does pop up, then I can be there to make sure, to help stop it.
I can monitor it, and at whatever point that I feel comfortable, I can say, okay, here's my story. Right. If they ever become comfortable, yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's an excellent point. So overall, I thought it was a really interesting case, especially because, this whole thing played out through social media.
Absolutely.
So, and that is my dog making his bed. My dog's
anybody wonders what the weird thing going on. Any weird noises on Sarah's side, it's her dog.
Yes.
Weird noises on my side, it's wildlife or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe me. Okay. Hey, Sarah, do we have some slop of the week? By the way, I want to, before we talk about that, one, I'm going to give a shout out to our supporters, our sponsors. That's going to be Osmosis Association, which, by the way, you can see the ticker down below. Conference coming up in about a month, a little bit more than a month. I'll be there. Sarah's not going to be there this year, maybe next year, but it's a really good conference. Yeah. Our second one, Paraben, and Paraben Core does mobile phone forensics. They've got some free tools and some paid tools, and they even have their own AI. And then also Forensic OSINT, which is one of the tools that you can use to get evidence for your case as you browse the internet and have that evidence hashed and ready for court. Okay, now before we go to your slop of the week, I do want to give a shout out. I guess a post-mortem shout out to Sora. Sora AI, it's officially shut down. One of the big sources of slop out there, one of the biggest, easiest ones, and one of the I think best ones out there. I believe the API is still running through September, so if you want to still connect to it, you still can. But anybody on the outside just using it via the app or the website, it's gone. Sarah.
Hold on. I actually had a glitch with tonight's AI slop.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Well, that's okay. We won't have slop today. No big deal.
Okay.
You'll see more slop next week. Today, we'll have no slop in honor of Sora. All right. Anyway.
Right.
See you, everybody.
I just wanted to say something, and that is, if you yourself have been ever victimized, please make sure to report it to the police because it is never too late.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ciao. Bye,
Ciao.
everyone.